we were excluded from this frozen asset issue and from the war loan. And since I'm convinced that Europeans are on the brink of war and want to defeat Russia, we must now constantly work to ensure they don't drag us in.
This is a declaration of war, so it's not some kind of financial maneuver. It's not about giving a war loan to anyone.
War loans also have consequences, and that's what we're talking about. A war loan isn't about entering a war tomorrow morning, but to take something from someone, give it to the enemy, and then expect the other side to simply watch idly. This is such an idealistic, unfounded, and truly naive thought that I actually shivered when I said it. And I saw that this thought simply isn't present in people's minds. All right, that's quite enough about the foreign exchange reserves. So the immediate danger of war, I personally believe, was successfully averted yesterday. In this matter, the Belgian Prime Minister played an absolutely enormous role. He did what he did not, due to geopolitical and perhaps not even moral considerations, when he essentially put an end to this proposal, but quite simply, he just did the math.
And this is such an enormous amount of wealth, even when considering the Belgian context, that if this or the operation fails, meaning this money is taken from the Russians and given to others, but the Russians will win this in court, for which they have a very serious chance. At that moment, someone will have to be held accountable for this, and that will be a Belgian company, or rather Belgian companies, and behind them, the Belgian government. So, Belgium's financial collapse, as it was on the line yesterday, and their prime minister managed to save Belgium from that, although the pressure, especially from the Germans, was incredibly high. The Germans' plan was that a decision on this money had to be made last night. I must say in general that there is a major deception going on here in Western Europe. This was clearly admitted last night by leaders among themselves. Oh, the legend, the story being spread in Western Europe is that this war won't cost a single Western European person anything. So not a single French person will pay a single penny for this. Neither will the Spanish nor the Germans. Because eventually, at the very end, when we defeat the Russians, then the Russians will have to pay reparations, and until then, we will take their frozen assets. Therefore, later, the reparation settlement will be. The way this is structured is, here we have Ukraine. We're going to give them a loan. So the European Union is providing a loan to the Ukrainians, a loan which the Ukrainians will eventually have to pay back. And although we give this loan in such a way that the European Union goes out to the financial markets and takes on credit, because, as you know, we simply don't have any money ourselves. So he takes out the loan, and then he passes this loan on to Ukraine in the form of a loan, with the condition that he will only be able to repay those from whom he took out the loan on the financial market if the Ukrainians also make their payments. So the two loans are interconnected, but the Ukrainians are unable to pay. Consequently, someone will have to repay the loan taken from the financial market, right? That won't be Ukraine. Then the European Union and its member states will have to repay it. We were excluded from this frozen asset issue and from the war loan. And since I'm convinced that Europeans are on the brink of war and want to defeat Russia, we must now constantly work to ensure they don't drag us in. That is the task. For this, we will need an incredible political performance, greater than what Horthy or István Tiszta could deliver, because they did not succeed. This is a historical challenge we face, and for the coming years. It won't last months, but will endure for several years. It's the biggest political problem that needs to be solved. The responsibility lies with the EPP. The European People's Party is the leading war party. All trouble comes from them, and they are German.
It just really turned out that the German party.
In Germany, there will indeed be elections, but these will only be regional in nature. No national elections are anticipated for the time being, so the probability of peace advocates gaining a dominant position in Germany is at this very moment exceedingly low. Therefore, with Germany pushing towards war, we must argue for staying out of this conflict, just as we should have done in 14 and similarly in 39. So then, with these few thoughts, I wish everyone a blessed, peaceful Christmas. Please keep your fingers crossed that it all works out. The Slovak Prime Minister also fought very well, as did the Czech one, who made it clear that he was elected not to send Czech money to Ukraine, and therefore he will not deviate from this. An unexpected argument. They are no longer used to it here in Brussels, but this happened, and we stuck to our line. The truth is, there was a moment, a specific point in time, when it suddenly dawned on me that, we could actually veto this. Because you see, the thing is, for us to proceed with joint borrowing, the budget itself needs to be modified. And for that to happen, complete unanimity is absolutely essential. And now I also spoke with everyone I needed to at such a time. With the big boys here. I tried to understand what consequences each thing would have, but I became convinced that although I could legally veto this, having a German, French and Italian boot on our chest all at once, even with well-developed chest muscles, would be unbearable. So I believe that for Hungary to embark on the adventure of having all major European pro-war countries become our direct, immediate and close enemies simultaneously, Hungary, I think, could not endure that.
That they had to settle for less, and this was but the Germans don't want to take out a loan. So what's behind it, of course, is that if a loan is taken out now and it all fails, whether we defeat Russia or it all fails, then they'll be stuck with, I don't even know how much, but for example, the liability for the frozen assets. That's another 50 billion euros that would weigh on the German. So the Germans are in a very special situation. Whatever happens, they always pay the most. And from this, they try to somehow balance choosing the least bad option from many. They have to accept it, right? I'm outlining the responsibilities roughly. So
the frozen Russian assets. We have taken possession of them. The Russians will certainly go to court. There was a significant debate about whether this was even possible. Of course it is possible. The Belgian Prime Minister clearly explained exactly how and where this could be done, and in several instances the Russians have already initiated legal proceedings. So in other matters, there is already a clear precedent for Russia to sue European nations regarding property disputes, specifically war-related property disputes. So the Russians are going to win this. A lawsuit like this takes about 16 years. I've checked the average. Lawyers will work themselves to death. The sword of Damocles constantly hangs over one's head. The books are a mess. It's unclear where exactly this should be accounted for. Credit rating agencies too.
It's funded. Everyone is just observing, so it will take quite a few years. Ultimately, the Russians will win. There's no argument about that.
Although everyone said not to worry about it, there's no debate that this kind of seizure of assets it's a clear violation of law. The Russians will win this, and then this money must be returned to them. And then the logic of it, according to international legal practice, is that not just what was taken must be returned, but much more.
As time passes, interest accumulates, and God knows what else. And in the end, it's not 230, but let's say 400 billion that needs to be repaid. And the Belgian makes the following argument. Okay, here's this 230, let's debit it from your account. So either you pay, or because of this company called Euroclear, or rather we Belgians must bear the consequences, or not. Did we take responsibility for this?
And he said that if we didn't take at least 75% of the responsibility now in advance, if you don't add up this responsibility here and don't state individually who takes how much, the German took 25, by the way. So if you don't add it up, then this deal is off. Understood. No one wants to take responsibility for this. If anyone did want to, they certainly kept it a secret, but no one stepped forward to say they'd like to pay this way because they must return to Parliament. And in Parliament, they'll have to say, we led the country into an adventure, at the end of which the opposition will say, you Italians will pay, and then a huge sum will come. If Hungary had gone into this adventure of frozen assets and we had failed, then 400 billion, if I'm counting correctly, 400 billion forints we would have lost. And we also discussed the 7-year budget. I presented the Hungarian position, which can be summarized as follows.
There's absolutely no point in even beginning to discuss the upcoming annual budget until we have completely finalized and closed out the previous one. Because as we clearly stated and recorded in the minutes, it remains unfinished business. Therefore, until we receive all of our outstanding funds, there will be no new budget.